I love my church. The music, the preaching, the times of sweet fellowship, it's familiar, comfortable. It may not be a church for everyone, but it works for me. It's mine, and I love it. But what if the church was never really designed to be about me or you? What if the church was never about what we want it to be? How might we learn to love the church for what it was designed for? To be a community pursuing the ways and words of Jesus together. A place where it's safe to ask the hard questions and deal with life's messes. A gathered collection of people striving to be and make disciples who make disciples. I love my church. Maybe that's not the point. What if instead I committed to saying, I love Jesus' church?
Several years ago, I had an opportunity to be part of a group of pastors who were young and new in ministry, and once a month we got together with a seasoned ministry veteran, and he just poured wisdom and experience into us, gave us space to learn and to grow and ask questions. And I remember one conversation we were talking about preaching and the central role that it plays so often in the life of the church, and how it's important to always to maintain integrity when you preach. He said too often, sometimes this thing happens when we start preaching, that it starts off and we say, once so-and-so said, and then we quote some really wise words from somebody, and then the next time we use that story or those quotes, it becomes, one time I heard somebody say, and then by about the third or fourth time, you just kind of say it as if it's your own. I want to avoid doing that. But there's a story that's kind of floated around, and because of the nature of things, it's hard to track down the origin of it. So I can't tell you who said this first. I tried to do some digging, and I kept getting different answers, which probably means none of those people said it first. They heard it from someone who heard it from someone who somewhere along the line said, hey, that's really smart. So I'm going to pass some wisdom on that is not original to me, and I just would like to let you know that up front. But the story goes like this. A man was talking to his friend and said, sometimes I just get so frustrated at the way things are. And sometimes I just want to ask God why He doesn't do something about all the hurt and the suffering and the division and the sickness in our world. His friend said, well, why don't you ask Him? The man thought for a moment and said, well, because I'm kind of afraid He would ask me the same thing. And such is the challenge of following the ways and the words of Jesus. Because it's easy for us to say, this is the way things should be. Right? You ever feel that? You see something that's not as it should be? It's really easy to say, this is how it should be. It is much harder to put in the work to make how it is how it should be. It's easy sometimes to spot what's wrong. It's easy sometimes to spot what it should look like, how things should be, how the world should run. It's a little harder to commit to doing the necessary work to move how it is closer to how it should be. It's easy for us at times, particularly within the church, to nod and amen our way through some really hard things and never take the next step to try to live it out. It's easy to say this is how things should be. It's harder to make it as it should be. If the last 15 years of swimming in this sea that we call church revitalization has taught me anything, it's that everyone wants their church to be a church on mission. Right? Like, rare are the occasions or the occurrences of a congregation that will say, that would disagree that reaching people who are far from Christ should be our highest priority. But if these last several years have taught me anything, it's that everyone wants their church to be on mission. Not everyone wants to do the hard work to get their church on mission and to keep their church on mission. Because what it takes for the church to be on mission is for us to let go of our church. Right? Everybody wants their church to be on mission, but to do that, they have to let go of their church. They have to begin to hold it loosely. So that they can start to fall in love with Jesus' church. And the essence of Jesus' church, as we've been seeing over these last few weeks together, is this call to be and make disciples who make disciples. To fall passionately in love with Jesus' church means to fall passionately in love with the mission of Jesus to seek and save the lost, to raise people up in discipleship, which means letting go of my church and falling in love with his. Too often, we set out in a revitalization context striving for new life. We set off striving for things to be more like they should be rather than as they are, only to realize that maybe we're fighting more for our church than for Jesus's. Here's what I know to be true, guys. As soon as this pursuit of church revitalization becomes more about me not wanting my church to die, about you not wanting your church to die, than it does about me wanting to be and make disciples who make disciples, and you wanting to be and make disciples who make disciples, then the writing is on the wall. Because the harder I fight to keep my church alive, the more sure it is that it will die. That's the hard reality. So often we pursue new life of revitalization because we're desperately saying, I don't want my church to go away. I don't want my church to die. But the surest way for a church to die is to fight harder for your church than for Jesus's. The harder you fight to keep your church, my church, alive, the more sure it is that it will die. But that should make perfect sense to us by now, right? Because if you've been tracking with us through this series, we've heard it over and over again, and I want to give it to you one more time before we kind of put a bow on this conversation. If you're following along in the YouVersion app, taking your notes there, if you want to jot it down and fill in the blanks, let me give it to you one more time, guys. My church has an expiration date, but Jesus' church stands forever. Your church has an expiration date. This church has an expiration date. Jesus' church stands forever. Can we do something a little different that we haven't done in our few weeks together yet? Can we try something? It's going to be uncomfortable. You okay with that? That's right. You guys are like, we're getting used to uncomfortable. Good. That's the first step to getting things going. All right. Here's what I want us to do. I want us to see if we can verbalize this together, right? Can we do that thing where we take it from our ears and run it through our hearts and then out our mouth? Because there's something about saying things that are true sometimes that helps kind of ingrain it in us. So can we do that? Before we turn the page from this conversation, can we just say that together so that we make sure we've got it? That my church has an expiration date. Okay, we're not ready. I caught you off guard. Let's try it again, guys, all right? My church has an expiration date. Jesus' church stands forever. Because if I have fallen in love with my church, and that's what I'm fighting for, I'm fighting a losing battle. And it's only when I let, quote unquote, my church die that Jesus raises up new life. By the power of the Spirit, that something new emerges. Which again should make perfect sense to us, right? Because ours is a resurrection faith. Ours is a resurrection God who is in the business of bringing life out of death. We love that idea. We just kind of aren't in love with the idea that to get resurrection, there has to be death. In the case of church revitalization and God bringing new life to a local congregation, the thing that has to die is my church, your church, our church, so that Jesus, by the power of his resurrection, can raise up something new. As we've made our way through this conversation, we've seen a lot. And we've come this far wrestling with what it means to hold grace and truth in tension. And we've come this far wrestling with what it means to embrace worship that isn't about external things, but is worship in spirit and in truth. And we've come this far wrestling with what it means to join Jesus in his mission, to let the transformation that he brings to our life become a testimony to all who will listen, to come and see the one who sends us to go and tell. We've come through all of that. And we've come this far nodding and amening. But if we don't embrace this last piece of what it means to fall in love with Jesus' church, it all comes to nothing. Because it's here in this last piece where falling in love with Jesus' church brings about the death of my church. To get us going this morning, I want to invite us into a place in John's gospel on the night that Jesus would be arrested. We're going to come to the text in just a moment, but to set the stage for us, in John chapters 13 through 16, we're told of Jesus' last meal with his disciples. And John tells it to us a bit differently than the other Gospels. As John recounts the evening, it was during supper that Jesus shares with his disciples that he's going to be betrayed and handed over. It's in the midst of that revelation that Jesus stands up from the table, wraps himself in a towel, stoops down and begins to wash their feet as an act of humble service. He dismisses Judas, who had agreed to betray him to the chief priests. But none of the other disciples know why Judas is leaving. And from there, Jesus begins to launch into one last teaching with the remaining disciples. And in those chapters, Jesus covers a variety of things. He talks about his coming death, that he will be going away, and he makes the promise that he will return. Jesus tells them of the promised coming of the Holy Spirit. And he tells them of the way that they will bear witness to the world of the things they've seen and heard, and how the world will reject them for it. And then, just before leaving the upper room to go to the garden where he will be handed over to the chief priests, Jesus prays. He first prays for himself, that the Father would be glorified in his obedient surrender by going to the cross. Jesus then prays for his disciples, that the Father will guard them and protect them as they are sent out into the world. And then, hours before his arrest, the night before his crucifixion, Jesus prayed for us. Let's check this out, John chapter 17. And begin reading in verse 20 in the midst of Jesus' prayer. But listen to how our Savior prays. My prayer is not for them alone, meaning the disciples. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be one as we are one. I in them and you in me. May they be brought to complete unity, to let the world know that you sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me. Father, I want those you have given me to be with me where I am and to see my glory, the glory you have given me because you loved me before the creation of the world. Righteous Father, though the world does not know you, I know you, and they know that you have sent me. I've made you known to them and will continue to make you known, in order that the love you have for me may be in them, and that I myself may be in them. Jesus, the one and only begotten Son of God, the Word made flesh, prayed for us. Let's let that settle for a minute. Because trying to unpack his words without letting it settle in, that the one who spoke the world into existence prayed to his Father for us, kind of robs the words of their power. Jesus prayed for us, and did you catch what he prayed? He prayed that we would be one. Why? So we could all just get along? Did Jesus pray that we would be one so that we can just enjoy sweet fellowship? Did Jesus pray that we would be one so that we could just have a slam and worship service and just every week, man, it's great, I can't wait till Sunday, I see y'all later? No. Why did Jesus pray that we would be one? So that the world will know the Father sent him and loves them as he loved the Son. I don't know about you, but it sounds to me as if there is no room in Jesus' prayer for me and my church. There's only room in Jesus' prayer for we and Jesus' church. That's why this last piece of the puzzle is so vital, because it runs so counter to everything that our culture and the world spends the rest of the week filling us with. It's about you. It's all about you and what you need, your wants, your preference, right? We talked about that a couple weeks ago, that whole preference thing. That doesn't sound a lot of room in Jesus' prayer for that. In fact, I would put it like this. Again, it's in the teaching notes. If you want to jot it down and fill in the blanks, you can do that. But the church Jesus prayed for trades a me-first culture for a we-first community united for the sake of his mission. I'll give that to you again. The church that Jesus prayed for will trade a me-first culture for a we-first community that is united for the sake of his mission. Have you ever thought the cross seems like a messy solution? I know I've wrestled with that, right? Like, God can do anything. So couldn't he just like fix the whole sin problem some way that's a little less invasive? The cross seems like a really messy solution. I mean, if God wants the world to know that he loves them, couldn't he just tell them? But this is one of those times that if we've fallen in love with our church more than Jesus's, he'll ask us the same question. I want them to know the depth of my love. So why don't you just tell them? Jesus invites us into this mission that he has sent by the Father to show the world his love. And in John 17, the remarkable thing is when he prays for the disciples and those who will believe through their testimony, he doesn't pray that they would be removed from the world. And there were plenty of groups within first century Jewish culture that thought that was the solution. Right? The way we're going to fix the problem is to just withdraw. We're going to build a big monastery. We're going to put up walls. We're going to make sure that we have a place to be where we're going to be safe while the world burns. But that's not what Jesus prayed for his disciples. He prayed that the Father would protect them as he sent them into the world. His answer wasn't to withdraw any more than God's answer to the problem of sin was just to magically fix it. But he stepped into the mess. He picked a really invasive way to deal with the problem of human sin. And he prayed that they would be protected, that we would be protected as he sends us into the world, because something that we saw at the very beginning of this conversation a few weeks ago, that Jesus' church is founded on the notion that there is a spiritual conflict raging in the world. Remember back to John 16? What did Jesus say in response to Peter's confession, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God"? He said, "On this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not stand against it." That is language that says there is a spiritual conflict, that there is an unseen realm that we can't see that is antagonistic toward the inbreaking of God's kingdom. Jesus' church is founded on this notion that there is a spiritual conflict. That's why Jesus said the gates of hell will not stand against it. But here's what we have to remember in the warfare of the first century world, and probably the 21st century world as well. A city's gates don't advance. A city's gates don't go out to fight. Gates are a defensive mechanism of war. Yet Jesus says the gates of hell will not stand against his church. He's inviting us into a mission that flips the usual script from us playing defense to the church playing offense in an assault on the gates of hell. To love Jesus' church is to engage in that mission to be and make disciples who make disciples. To go on the offense. And so Jesus prays for our protection as we go, and that we would go as one. And guys, make no mistake about it. If as followers of Jesus, if as a local church, we decide that we are going all in to embrace this notion that following Jesus is an invitation to his mission that is an assault on the gates of hell itself, the enemy's number one tactic will be to divide and conquer. And he's really, really good at it. And he has 2,000 years experience of using division to undermine the mission of the church. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but everything in our world and culture right now is doing everything it can to lend him a helping hand to keep people divided about things of less than eternal consequence. See, the church Jesus prayed for, it trades a me-first culture for a we-first community that is unified for the sake of his mission, that is determined that the one thing that matters above all else is this call to be and make disciples who make disciples. The church Jesus prayed for is a church that trades playing defense for playing offense. And I think that's the core of this thing that we talk about when we're talking about church revitalization. Because local churches get stuck either because we started playing defense or we start playing defense because we got stuck, and usually it's a little bit of both. But we get stuck, and so we go into preservation mode. Right? We hear those words that we find it easy to say, yeah, I agree with that. I don't want my church to die. And so we start to play defense. We start to lower our risk factor. We start to ward off change that might just sink the whole thing. We start playing defense, and so we erect barriers that limit the amount of influence that new people and new ideas can have. Because as things change and shift, even if it's in a direction of health and growth, it feels like my church is slipping away. Our church is slipping away. The thing I've always loved doesn't look like it used to look. And it feels like our church is dying, even in the process of the Lord bringing new life. Because in that moment, what we're feeling is absolutely true. Our church is dying, and Jesus' church is growing up in its place. And to walk into the seasons of new life and resurrection, we have to endure the pain of death. And it sounds counterintuitive. I know it does. It sounds counterintuitive that as we pursue church revitalization, because we don't want our church to die, but it's precisely the death of my church, of your church, of our church, that makes the necessary space for Jesus' church to take root, for Jesus' church to grow, for Jesus' church to begin to thrive and produce fruit. We go into these seasons of church revitalization. I've seen them more times than I like to think about. We go into these seasons trying to save my church, and we start playing defense. But Jesus' mission is an invitation to play offense and storm the gates of hell with the sure promise that by the power of his redeeming blood and the power of his resurrection, they will topple. Jesus didn't overstate his case. He didn't over exaggerate. I started to say it this way and call myself, I'll just give it to you. He didn't write a check with his mouth that his rear end couldn't cash. He said, the gates of hell will not stand against my church. And then we get to these places where the chips are down and we play defense. And we forget that the gates are over there. And we're not going to topple them from over here. We get stuck trying to play defense to ward off that expiration date. But Jesus' church stands forever. And so if that's what we fall in love with, if that's what we're committed to, we have nothing to lose. Right? Like, these seasons feel like they are loaded with pressure. We got to get this right. We got to get this figured out. But if we fall in love with Jesus' church, it's going to stand forever. If we spend every ounce of energy that we have as a community of faith for however long we continue to remain, and we spend all of that chasing Jesus' church, we have nothing to lose. Absolutely nothing to lose. At the beginning of this conversation, I shared with you about the origins of that iconic I Heart NY logo. And all these years later, a simple marketing campaign by the State Department of New York's tourism department that was scribbled on a napkin in crayon in the back of a taxi cab has endured. But if we're honest, it probably would have faded away. Right? Like, there came a point where it had so saturated the pop culture, it was a little too cliche, a little too on the nose. It was a little too touristy, right? Like, the joke was, you could, if you went to New York City, you could tell who wasn't from there because they had the I Heart New York button, right? Like, it was just kind of a little too cute. It had probably outlived its welcome and probably would have faded away completely if not for one event. That's the events that unfolded on September 11, 2001. Shortly after the terrorist attacks on the Twin Towers, the country rallied around New York, and particularly New York City. And in the aftermath of those attacks, that simple graphic, I Heart NY, found new life when the words "more than ever" were added to the bottom. And that red heart was marked by a black scorch, representing the lives lost, representing the spirit of the city to rally back. Now, some of you who are very detail-oriented people may have already noticed that there's a slight shift in the imagery this week. That for the first time in this series, that red heart is marred by a black mark, a small ashen cross. Sometimes it takes crisis for people to get back to the thing they love. It's what happened for New York. When the city was under assault, the chips were down, everybody said, no, we don't go down that easy. Not without a fight. We're New York. Sometimes it takes crisis. As the way of the cross prepares us to let our church die so that we can fall in love with Jesus' church. Sometimes it takes crisis. It takes feeling like everything is falling down, that the world is spinning backwards for us to fall in love with what we loved all along. Maybe we have to tweak it. Maybe we have to update it, infuse it with new life, like a 30-year-old tourism campaign. Maybe some of the things we love became a little too cliche, a little too on the nose, a little too touristy. Sometimes it takes crisis for us to fall back in love. Guys, I'm convinced this season is that. This is our crisis. This season is our opportunity to see God do something new, to raise up new life. That's why I'm here. Because I believe God's not done. Because I believe Jesus' church matters and is worth investing in. That's why I said yes again to church revitalization. I want to go a step further with you. I want you to know that's why your district believes in this project. Because they believe Jesus' church is worth investing in. They believe God is not done in this place. Your district team believes that God wants to do something here at Lyman Wesleyan to the tune of investing close to $20,000 over the next 2 years. We are not in this fight alone. But sometimes it takes crisis for us to remember what we loved all along. So as we come to the end of this conversation, as the end of this series, the question I have for us is, church, are you in? Are you in for falling in love with Jesus' church afresh and anew and assaulting the gates of hell? To join Jesus in this mission to set captives free, to see chains broken. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. Normally, as we kind of conclude at this point, I'll invite the band to come back and we'll sing in response of worship. We're going to do something a little bit different today. Instead of inviting the band to come forward, I want to invite us to simply move to the outer aisles. And as a community of faith, I want us to encircle this space. And I want us to invite us to spend some time joining Jesus in prayer for his church. It's a little out of the box. It's a little uncomfortable. But I warmed you up earlier, right? When we did the whole, we're going to participate out loud. So as you make your way to the aisles, we're going to spend some time praying for Jesus' church. At the end of this, I would encourage you, we're going to have folks at the exits with a prayer card that just have a simple monthly prayer focus. Prayers that will help us through this church year fall in love with Jesus' church. Now, some of y'all have been around the holiness movement long enough that you remember prayer meetings, old-fashioned prayer meetings and concerts of prayer and those kind of things. So if in these moments you want to pray out loud, I would invite you to do that. And then here in just a few moments, I'm going to close our time in prayer and we will be dismissed. But be sure you pick up a card on your way out. We want to pray some prayers over the next several months that will help us fall in love with Jesus' church, that will help us get okay letting our church, my church, your church die. Because we know it's okay. Because every local church has an expiration date. But Jesus' church stands forever. So let's pray for his kingdom to come, for his will to be done, for his church to be made new in Lyman as it is in heaven. Let's go to prayer, church.